Hi everyone, welcome back to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yee, and today I'm taking a look at Dante Inferno. Now, the monstrosity that you see before me on the table here, this is the deluxe edition, the kind of all-in box from the GameFound campaign. So keep in mind that there's also a retail edition out there which has cardboard equivalent components for all the things like the neoprene playmat, the plastic miniatures, you're going to see some pretty overwrought player boards and stuff. So I'm reviewing what we have available, but I've also played the regular edition of the game as well. We just don't have a review copy of that. So I'm going to be giving you my thoughts squarely on this game, regardless of this production here, which I honestly think is a little bit over the top. Now that being said, this is a cooperative boss battling game, each chapter split into two halves. First you have the chronicle or the exploration phase, the story phase, and then you go into the boss battle itself. So let me show you a brief overview of how this game kind of works, and then I'll give you my thoughts. Dante Inferno is broken into two halves of gameplay. The first half here that we have set up is the exploration phase. On the back side of this board is going to be the battle mat itself. This is the deluxe edition of the game, so it comes with miniatures instead of standees, a neoprene mat instead of a physical board. I'll point out a few other little differences along the way. This is one player board here, which is obviously the deluxe edition. The regular edition is cardboard and actually a little bit more usable. Regardless of the number of players, you're going to always be using 4 characters, whether on their human-controlled side or on the simplified companion side, where they only have a few actions to worry about. If you play solo, you can have up to 3 of them on their companion side and only worry about managing one player's decks of cards. Over here on the side is going to be your vigor track. If you lower and reach 0, you are knocked out, you'll take a wound. And this represents your ability to take action, spend dice, and you can it's also your health track. There are 9 circles of health that the party is going to be moving through, journeying with Dante Alighieri here, leading their party. The 9 chapters are broken into 2 halves, and each come in their own box here with an explanation of what items will be in each of the boxes, each of the stories. Each chapter is divided into 2 parts, the exploration story phase, and then the boss battle, or the confrontation it's called. You are going to be referencing the Book of Chronicles, this very large book which walks you through the setup of each of the chapters. It'll also give you the story and the prologues as to what's going on, as well as the actual interactions. Now, when you are on a card numbered here, so number 1, the Dark Forest, you'll go through and you'll read the Dark Forest section here of the story. The party will make decisions together, and based on what decisions they make, they will face different outcomes. There are going to be a lot of challenge checks. So for example, if you're using a strength check, you're going to look at each party member. You're going to look at that matching attribute. They will get a certain number of dice to roll based on those attributes that they have. Then, players can spend of their stamina or their vigor. So if you notice, my character here, Sophia, has 0 of that attribute, so she can spend a number of vigor to add dice up to her roll there. Players are then going to roll the dice and see if they reach the correct number of successes as a party. There are certain ways to get re-rolls. When you re-roll, you take one of these cards here, these fate cards, and you'll add them into the second half of the boss battle. So the more that you mitigate your luck in the first half and try to get better story advantages, you're making the boss battle more difficult. You'll be making branching decisions, having different paths, finding different discoveries that are going to affect the boss battle as well as future chapters. You might discover specific treasure here, like Charon's rags or an angelic sword, which will strengthen up your characters. And you might even come across areas where you have to choose amongst different paths, and this is going to as well affect the game. Once you reach a story conclusion in the first half of the game, you will set up in the Book of Chronicles here. It'll show you how to set up the confrontation, important details about the boss, the malefactors you'll be fighting against. You'll notice that your individual characters are now on the board, and this is why you'll need to have all 4 in the game at all times. They are going to occupy these small triangular wedges within each square space, whereas the malefactor or the boss you're fighting against is going to take up these circles in the center. They will move 1 space at a time through the circles, whereas your characters can move 1 space at a time in any of those triangle wedges, moving square sections at a time. The display of cards up top here is going to represent a few different pieces of useful information. The boss, the special abilities he has, his toughness that you have to roll to defeat, and also his counter strike, his strike back. The decks here which represent the villain's actions, but also its health. So if you plan to take out King Minos, you're going to have to exhaust this entire deck. And as I mentioned before, some of these Arcana cards or these Fate cards,
that were shuffled in from the first half of the story phase to mitigate dice are going to be put into the Malefactor's main deck. During the battle, all characters can take actions in any order. There are a few basic actions you can do. You can always move by using Vigor over here on your health track, just to move from space to space. And you can also play cards into your card area, doing all of the actions shown on them. Now, this is if you're a human character. If you are one of these companion characters, because you're playing with fewer than 4 players, you'll simply take one of these action selection discs and take an action using the simplified side of the characters over here. At the start of each round, you will refresh, gain some more vigor, and you'll also clear out spaces on your board for more action cards to be played onto in future rounds, so that you can take larger and larger turns, or the companion characters will get more of these action selections so they can use multiple actions in the same turn. Each character has a completely asymmetric deck with different abilities and different specialties, the ability to climb more easily or be released if you're being held, swapping with other characters, different things. So for example, if I played this card here that allows me to move 2 with climb, then I can move into these different elevation regions without having to use the stairs. Then I could make an attack with a bonus. Now, each character is going to have different weapons that give them a basic amount of dice to roll with. Different effects will give you bonus. So for example, this says you get a +1 bonus die for the attack. If you change elevations, which I did with my effect, I get 2 extra bonus dice on top of that. Plus my character, Sophia herself, says when attacking from the rear, consider the sturdiness of my opponent to be 1 fewer. So you'll see that I am looking for a target of 4 because my special ability lowers this by 1. So I did hit that, so I'll do 1 damage. However, I am also going to suffer a counterattack because his counterattack value is 2. So I did 1 damage, so I'll get rid of this card. If I did not suffer a counterattack, this would simply be discarded and his deck would be 1 card lower. If you do suffer a counterattack, then you will discard this card, but first you'll reveal what his counterattack is, resolve all of those effects. He'll move, he'll charge, he'll grab, he will take these pillars and throw them at people. All of these different effects will happen based on what's written on these cards. If you were to do multiple damage, 8 total hits on him, then I would be able to inflict 2 points of damage because his sturdiness value is dropped to 4, and I would get rid of 2 cards, but only suffer the counterattack of 1 of them. When it's the Malefactor's turn, they will reveal and take the top action of the card. Well, not reveal because you already see what's there, but they'll simply do all of these steps and put that card on the bottom of their deck. Then you'll go to the next deck here. So this represents effects from his throne, which you notice is a much smaller deck, and it's an optional thing that you can destroy so that it takes fewer actions against you. And then lastly, there are sometimes story events that will happen as you reveal these. You do what they say, and it might even bring in more malefactors. It might bring in, based on your story choices, alternate ways to win the battle. The way to lose is for a character to take too many wounds. Every time their vigor is brought down to 0, they'll reset to 6, but then they will also take a wound card. In the basic version, basic difficulty, each wound is simply just a wound that takes up one of these slots and is difficult to heal, slowing down the number of cards you'll be able to play. If you're playing on the more brutal difficulty, each one also has a targeted type of effect, which is going to slow you down and make it harder for you to play. There's a lot of other details I did not go into, specifically how to use these tokens and the boons that they give you, how to open up treasure chests and get one-time use findings cards, as well as the sins that go into your hand as you cycle through your deck and how to get rid of them. But these are all details that you'll figure out if you play the game. This is just a quick overview of how to play Dante Inferno. Now let's go ahead and give you my thoughts.
So where do you start with a game like this? There's so much going on in this game, and I have so many positives to say about it. I do have some pretty important negatives. So all around, let me just start with the fact that this is a campaign game. This is a 9-chapter. It fits with the theme. I think that the theme is integrated fantastically into here. The fact that you go through a story adventure phase first, I think really sets the tone for each of these circles. So you're not just jumping from boss battle to boss battle and reading a wall of text before you get into there. You really are reading a lot of text, but you're breaking it up between different decision points and dice checks and stuff. And I like this system. I really like that idea of spending the vigor and spending your health functionally in order to be able to roll more dice. The mitigation system is really neat, I think. And so you want to have those better story results, but also the game is interesting when you don't have them. And so I think that the branching story paths are fantastic. I think that they have a good amount of impact on future games. Maybe not as huge as, let's make a comparison point here. I think that's an easy comparison, is that this game has some structural similarities to Oathsworn. Each is a campaign game split between two halves, the exploration story half, and then the boss battle, the cooperative boss battle. And I think that there is some really great story paths, but this story is overall going to be more similar than dissimilar upon replays, and I have replayed several of these chapters, in fact, multiple times, but I really do enjoy the amount of variability you get. I think that the boss battle section of it is just as good. So I think both halves are strong, and that's important for a game like this. I find them both very interesting, and because the story part is not too hard to teach, it's okay that the boss battle part does have a lot more rules, and it does have a lot more rules. But I think that both halves are balanced in terms of how fun and impactful they feel. So I enjoy both of that. And I've played this both solo. I've played it with up to 4 players, and both halves work very well in both cases. Now, the game is only 9 chapters long, and so it's very finishable. In fact, I played this with someone who had previously played it. He said that him and his friends took a holiday weekend and they played the entire thing. And while that does take some real grit and some stamina to get through it in one whole, 3-day weekend, I also believe that that's doable. If someone told me, hey, I played all of Gloomhaven in a holiday weekend, I would say, no, I straight up don't believe you. So I really like that this game is a finishable campaign. I've gotten through the end of it and read through all the different, possible endings and stuff. I love that. I love that the game is good enough to finish through, but also that you can at 9 chapters, and you might play both halves in the same night or play them in different nights or something like that. It's finishable, which I think is a great achievement, but it's very interesting the whole way through. That being said, if you also want to just play this as one-shots, the rule book does have a small section. Oh, yeah, this is what you do. Beef up your characters this much, get some extra treasures and stuff like that. Fantastic, right? That's all so good. Now, the other things that I think are important in a game like this is the actual amount of variety. I think that the story is well written, and I don't feel like I'm just retreading the same parts over and over again. I think that the way that you upgrade your characters, which I did not even show in the faintest in that overview because there's a lot to it. I think that the way that the characters are upgraded, which is integrated into those story elements, is really nicely done. It makes it so that you're kind of playing the upgrade process, and that the branches that your characters go down and the different story beats are tied together. I think that's great. I like the amount of branching decisions that there are here. In terms of the boss battling, when you upgrade your characters, it feels cool, and it changes you, and it changes the way that you're going to be facing the challenges and playing playing up to your different character attributes and aspects. The bosses feel different from one fight to the next. They have different size and scope and what they can do. There are some that you will fight and they have branching different paths of beating them. Some of them have branching different paths of one of the characters is going to either be, you're going to face him with his huge old spear, or you're going to face him with his big old shield. And depending on what story decisions you've made in the first half of the game is going to then affect the second half. Which type of the boss are you going to fight? More aggressive, more defensive? I think that's really brilliant and so well executed. The actual battles themselves, I love the loose turn order system to them. I mean, it feels great. It feels so cooperative, and that's important if you're going to have a cooperative game that actually feels worth cooperating. Like I said, I've played this with 4 players many times, and when people are sitting there looking at their hand of cards, okay, well, I can, lose 2 vigor to just move 2 steps. I'll lose another one to open up a treasure chest. Then I'll play this card. And then someone else says, okay, but before you play that card, let me play this one, which is going to let me set up this, and it's going to give you a boost. Ooh, that's fantastic. Now I'll play this. And now, because I got this treasure, right, all of that is very loose turn structure. It's not one player at a time. It's anyone can take actions one after the other, in between each other. Hey, let me move and get out of the way, because I bet his counterattack, he's a boss who tends to charge. Let me move over here. That way when he charges, then I can get behind him and backstab him from the backside. And so you have a lot of these moments of cooperating, clever text on the cards as you play them out. It feels very thematic towards your characters. One of the characters can become stairs, because as you notice, there's different elevation. So yeah, if your character can't take the time to move around this way, to go this way, to climb up the stairs, one of your characters can say like, hey, I'll boost you. I play a card that takes one of my slots, but I'm going to pick you up and give you a plus dice roll bonus on your next attack. There's a great amount of cooperation, great amount of variety in how the characters feel different from each other. I love that fighting. I love that the bosses feel different. I mean, it's just, in so many ways, phenomenal. Whew. There's one specific rule I really like. One of the downsides of this, of having so much variety, is that there's a lot of rules overhead. And there's some really specific rules. But let me point out one specific rule that I really like, is that each character is limited to rolling 20 dice at a time. It sounds like one of those things in a lot of games. You're like, when am I going to get to 20 dice? My weapon lets me roll 3 or 4. Oh, but if I play this one, it says that if I'm attacking from a higher elevation, I get +4 bonus dice. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Oh, this previous player gave me a boost that lets me roll 2 extra dice. I also have this resource that gives me, extra die for every one of these red tokens that I've gathered that I turn in right now. I'm at 16 dice. If I do this, I get to roll 8 more. So you might actually hit that 20 dice limit. Maybe not in your first game, first 1 or 2 or 3 chapters, but I think by chapter 3 or 4, you can pull it off. And so the rule is, if you max out at 20 dice, every die that you would roll in addition to and beyond 20, you just automatically consider it 2 damage, 2 hits. That's fun. And so you have a lot of moments of like, I can either play a cool attack or I can boost another player. It makes you want to boost other players because those are guaranteed hits going through. That's what I mean by this is a game that uses its rule set to encourage cooperation, and it's a good use of the rule space. That being said, it's a lot of rules still. And I think one of the biggest weaknesses of Dante Inferno, as much as I love and really enjoy what's going on in this, is that I think there are persnickety rules still, right? The one thing I didn't show in the overview is that as you take different actions, whether you as a player character or as the little companion, the easy versions of the characters to run if you're playing at a lower player count, they have a numerical value next to them, which is you're supposed to move these discs, these fierceness track. Every time you take an action, it has 0 through 3 fierceness, and so it's going to bump you up that many steps. And so you constantly, every single action, are moving this fierceness track around, and it's easy to forget to do that because you're more excited about picking up a piece of furniture and throwing it at King Minos' head. Understandably, you're more excited about that than maintaining the fierceness track. Little things like that just kind of become a little encumbering, and I wish that the rule was something a little bit simpler, like the fiercest player targeted by the boss more often is whoever last did damage to him. Something like that would be a little bit easier. There's just things like that. There is a lot of rules. And sometimes they're not laid out very well. As strong as I think that the story writing is in this game, and I do think it's strong. I think that it's compelling. I think that it's humorous at times and doesn't take itself too seriously, but it also allows itself to be serious for its setting. I think that some of the technical writing aspects are not nearly as strong. I have found in my play a few references in the story, like, okay, you did this little story path, go grab this card. And the formatting of how it describes that card to grab doesn't match the formatting of the rest of the storybook, where it has it all in a very specific format. I feel like you see some of the revisions in the rules, minutely in the story. I feel like you see that where like a term, like 2 different terms are used for the same thing, like that type of stuff, which really does make it harder to learn, to play, to run the game with new players and stuff. I think that's so sad to me because it's a tremendous game, but it's it's encumbered by a few things that hold it back, I think, for me from being something I could just like wholeheartedly say is just, flawless. I wish that it were a flawless game. It's not. It has some rough edges. But it also does things that I don't think I've experienced in any other game like this. The setting, leaning into that hopelessness, and yet that hopefulness, that character growth, the arc that these characters go through over the course of play. It's so good. So how do I kind of wrap that up into a final thoughts? It's not easy, right? My final thoughts on this are, this game's tremendous. If you're okay with some persnickety rules and stuff, in order to get such a thematic experience, this could be one of your favorite games. The fact that the campaign is finishable, and it's not going to outstay its welcome, and you're going to be excited as you get into Circle 7, Circle 8, and you say, oh, there's only a little bit of time left. Oh, we've done some really weird things. I've made some bargains. I've grown in virtue, or I've made some unvirtuous decisions along the way, and that ties into future boss battles. I think that's awesome. I think it's so good. Some of the technical writing aspects of it, the rules are laid out in weird places. It has a great glossary at the end, but every time I want to reference, what does this token do? Oh, it's actually in a different part of the rule book than I think it's going to be. There's enough of those little things that get in the way that my final score for this is going to be an 8 out of 10. It's just shy of being an excellent game for me because, well, part of it is because it's so audacious. It is trying so much to be so much, and it succeeds in so many fronts. But there are a few aspects, particularly the rules, that I wish were just cleaned up a little bit more. So all that being said, I have had a tremendous amount of fun playing this game. I do really love it, and I see its shortcomings. That being said, I see this as being very potentially a lot of people's favorite big, epic, thematic, story-driven game out there. A lot of people are going to compare this to Oathsworn, and I think that's both a good and a fair comparison to make, but also speaks to how strong this game is. So an 8 out of 10 is a strong recommendation, a strong seal of approval from me, and just a few things holding it back from otherwise being a much higher score, an excellent game. So overall, I really love Dante Inferno. And if you look at this and you're just salivating over it, then I think that you have found the next game that you might love. Well, folks, thanks for coming out to this review here on the Dice Tower. I want to give a few shout outs to people who have supported this channel and allow us to continue to make content like this. So if your name is Eric Ngimli, the Untossable Dog, shout out to you. Here's a name written phonetically for me, Lin Tuvara and Laudapeli Rima. Thank you. And lastly, Will Kelly. Thanks so much for supporting the Dice Tower. If you enjoy what you're seeing here, please feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for coming out to this review. This is Dante Inferno. My name is Chris Yee. Take care.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Bassett.
All right, I can do this.